Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of What's Out There. I'm your host, Grim Webster, and this episode we're going to do something a little different. I was contacted on Reddit, which you may know is where I get a good deal of my submissions, by a guy who claims to have multiple paranormal experiences. Now, I could have handled that a couple different ways. I could have sifted through what he submitted and just picked out what I liked the best, or I could have taken one here and one there and just used them one per episode. But instead, what I decided to do is get this guy on Skype and just do a full interview with him. So that's what this episode is. This is an episode with a guy who I like to refer to as Haunted Tyler. I'm going to go ahead and play that for you now. Before we go ahead and start, let me just go ahead and thank you for doing this. This is very cool of you.
I'm always wanting to share more, so.
Okay, how about just go ahead and give me a quick rundown of what's going on, just for anybody listening who hasn't seen the post on Reddit.
Well, basically, there's a lot of things paranormally that happen in this house. From, me seeing something standing in my closet to, like a large black dog. It was more of a black cat the size of a dog, like a large dog that, my stepmom and sister have seen following my sister around at different times. And, they've seen it twice. And the funny thing is that, well, not really funny, but the thing is that both those times somebody in our family or, a close family friend has died soon after. So there's that. And then my dad has seen a figure of like a large man, like a 6'6", large man that was brown like mud, that had no genitals but was like naked. You could see the features. That was walking on both feet and then got down onto like all fours, like he was walking on his hands and his back feet into my room. There's been a whole lot that I've seen in this house. Like, before I even moved up here, I saw my stepmom's brother looking at my room, and he passed away several years ago before I had even met him.
Has it always been just in this house, or has it been going on before that?
For me, it's been going on since I was little. I've seen stuff since before I even understood what it was that I was seeing.
So, everything that you've seen in the house you're in now, have you seen the same things before, or are they specific to that house?
The things here are very specific to this house. Every area, I believe, has its own stuff. So, I'd say every area has its own things that pass through it. So it would make sense that not every area would have the same things to it.
Have you ever looked into the history of the property?
I haven't, but this whole area is a very old area. There's lots of old cemeteries around. Cleveland as a whole is known, just to have a lot of these sorts of hauntings around it. I don't know if you've ever heard of this place, but it's called Tinkers Creek Cemetery. It's maybe half an hour east of here in Valley View, Ohio. That place has been known for years and years going back for, people not being able to stay in that area. Settlers have never been able to really found it. Native Americans couldn't stay there, and there's a cemetery right there in that area that I've experienced. Things walking in the woods around me, whispers, being touched, stuff like that.
Have you always lived in that area, or have you lived farther away and still seen things?
Oh, I've lived pretty much in Ohio my entire life. I've seen stuff. I used to live in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, which was east of Columbus, about half an hour. and that's where I grew up, and was seeing my first paranormal things, and then I moved out west to Plain City, which is about half an hour west of Columbus, and London area. I'd seen things in all of the places I've lived there, and then just recently in March of this year, I moved up here to Cleveland.
Okay, so it's definitely not just the area that you're in now.
Right.
Okay. Have you ever tried to get any evidence, like video or EVP or anything like that?
Um, about 2 years ago, I had this thing going on where, as I was about to fall asleep, I would hear somebody say my name right in my ear, and it happened to me about every night for about a month straight, and it would scare me awake, and it would be a different voice every night. So what I did is I tried to set up a camera, or my laptop camera, and I would record myself every single night. And once I started doing that, it kind of died down a little bit. And I never really heard anything on the camera, and I never saw anything. So I don't know if that's, I mean, I've heard that you can, sometimes things like that will happen, but it just seems kind of weird to me that when I made a conscious effort to try to find out what it was, it stopped happening.
Right. Have you ever thought of getting paranormal investigators in to check it out or anything like that?
Uh, no, not really. I mean, I've done that before in the past. I've kind of gotten out of that because it seems like the more that I go out and try to investigate these kinds of things, the more stuff kind of happens at home. It's kind of like I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but I've heard, in the past, and I've seen personally that things can't follow you home.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I hear that, once you've got one following you home, others just kind of tend to gravitate towards it. So, I mean, I hear that paranormal investigators tend to pick up a lot the more that they do.
Yeah, it's a good practice is to always kind of, just have your zone pretty much, just to get all kinds of bad thoughts, clear your head before you enter an area. And then do the same before you get out. Just kind of relax, clear your mind, breathe. And that always seemed to help me.
The things in your house, do they seem malevolent, or I mean, do you get any bad feelings from them at all?
Certain ones, yeah, certain ones, no. Like, every now and then I'll wake up and really clearly see somebody standing in my closet, but that will never bother me. I work third shift, so I've got my room pretty blacked out,
Mm.
except for my closet light. I keep my closet light on so I don't stumble if I wake up to and when I'm getting ready. But every now and then, I always sleep facing the closet. And every now and then, during the day, I'll wake up, look into my closet, and see somebody standing there that pretty much fills up my closet. So it's a pretty big whatever. But I've never really felt anything bad in that sense. It's never really scared me. Another thing that never scared me was I saw my stepmom's brother who had passed away, like I said before, years ago, and that was kind of a weird experience for me because that was the first time I've seen something and not been afraid of it. It was really weird to me because there was this guy who I'd never seen before who looked into my room and just kind of looked me in the eyes. We made eye contact, and then just left the doorway.
He didn't try to communicate at all?
No, it seemed like he was like just curious as to who was in the house because this was one of the first times I'd actually spent the night up here. He just came from the direction of their bedroom and looked into my room. We made eye contact, and then he turned around and left. Went back in the same direction. It didn't bother me at all. I actually slept pretty good that night. But that was weird for me because I've never seen something and then not been afraid of it. It just, for whatever reason, never even bothered me.
One of the things that I was kind of interested in was you mentioned something about a box with a blinking light on it.
Yeah, now I would think that my stepmom and my dad are full of crap, but the way that they went about this, I kind of got to applaud them on because it made sure that neither one of them were just making anything up and actually saw their evidence. What it was is that my dad woke up in the middle of the night, and if you can picture like a 48-inch TV, there was just basically something like that, only completely black, floating in between their bed and the doorway. And my dad, being half asleep, wondered why the refrigerator was in their room. And as he's looking at it, he sees, this green light in the bottom right hand corner. He can't really figure it out. And at this point, my stepmom had woken up, seen it, and was starting to freak out a little bit. So he calmed her down and rolled over and went to sleep. My dad's just like that. He doesn't let things bother him like that. Well, the next morning, my stepmom's trying to talk to him about it, and he goes, no, don't say anything yet. So they each get a piece of paper and a pencil, and he says, draw it out. So they draw out the exact same thing. If you were looking down into the bedroom from above, where it would have been at, and all that, and he drew it from his perspective, looking towards the door. And it was the same thing. They both showed the same thing in their picture, positioning and everything. I don't really know what to think about that. I don't understand what that could have been.
You think it might go back to something your grandfather may have seen?
This is a connection that I've made. My dad doesn't really think that this has any connection to it at all, but to me it makes a lot of sense. My dad's a really kind of skeptical person when it comes to a lot of things, and the fact that he talked to my grandpa about this a lot, and as it was his grandpa, would have been my great grandpa, and that he asked him over and over again over the course of several years about this incident, and he said the story had never changed ever. So basically what happened was my grandpa, as he would say, was courting this girl. He had her out in the woods. They're just hanging out. It was one of their first couple of dates down by a creek. He had a brand new hat on. And this is back in like the 30s and 40s. And he said he felt something slap the bill of his cap. So he took it off and he looked at it. And it was covered in what looked like blood. So that freaked him out. He threw it into the creek. And the girl was freaking out. So he took her back to her house. And he said on his way back to his house, it was getting dark. It was dusk, and he looked out to his right in this field, and there was a sapling tree right in the middle of this field that was swaying back and forth like there was a real strong wind, but there wasn't any wind that night, and none of the other trees in that field were affected by it. Then as he was looking over at it, he saw something come running from, imagine, about half a mile away from that tree all the way to his truck, and then immediately make a right-hand turn 90 degrees and run alongside his truck. Now, as he's looking over at it, he was driving, an older pickup from that year range. As he's looking over at it, he described it as the face of an anteater standing on two legs with a body like a human and back legs like a horse and a really long tail. And he said it didn't like his headlights. It kept looking down at his headlights like it didn't like them. And at that point, he obviously he was scared. I would be scared. He pushed his truck as fast as it would go, which, back in those times was probably only about 60 or 70 miles an hour, and took out half a mile of fence that he had just put up that week with his dad on the way into the property. He was going so fast. He said he was so scared, he opened up his door, didn't turn off the truck or anything, and ran straight inside and locked the door and hid pretty much the rest of the night.
You say your dad saw an angry man in your den and had a psychic conversation with him?
Yeah, he wouldn't really call it a psychic conversation. He just called it like he thought. But basically what it was is we have a counter in our kitchen that he was getting his wallet and stuff up off of. And from the kitchen you can see the den. And he looked over there, and it was just like an older man, probably in his late 60s or early 70s. I was standing there in a flannel shirt, something that looked like something that an older guy would wear, maybe even back in the 60s or 70s. That was just looking at him like he was real angry with my dad. And my dad, just kind of thought in his head, "What are you doing here?" And he got this message back that sounded like, "This is my house. You need to leave." My dad is real protective over his family, his assets, and all that. And so he thought, "No, this is my house." This is all in his head. He thought, "No, this is my house. You need to leave." And he said the guy turned kind of sad, like he realized what was happening, but didn't really, know how to cope with it. And he got sad. And his shoulders kind of shrugged down. And he turned and walked off to the right, which goes towards our back porch. My dad walked in there, and he said there was nobody in there at all.
Tell me about the large man in the hallway.
Um, that one's actually a pretty short story. My dad was standing in the bathroom. The bathroom's directly adjacent or across from my room, getting ready for work. This was just recently, and he looked to his left and saw this thing, whatever it was, come from the hallway down by their room, just the same as my stepmom's brother when I saw him. And as he was turning the corner to go into my room, he went from standing on two legs to putting his hands out on the ground and walking with his hands and his feet rather than on his hands and knees, if you can imagine
Right.
that. But I mean, that's pretty much it. He said it went into my room and out of sight, and it bothered him enough that he didn't want to go in there and look at it.
Now, how often does this stuff happen?
It's very sporadic here. I've lived places where I've seen stuff, almost every night, but for me, I've been here since March, and I haven't seen anything until last month. And I mean, before that, I saw my stepmom's brother once. I mean, that's really the only thing here, but we can go 6 months without seeing something and nobody will see anything, or, my dad will see something nightly and nobody else will see anything, or, it's very sporadic. I mean, it doesn't affect everybody all the same, and people can go for several months at a time without seeing anything.
But everybody is affected, right?
Right.
Tell me about the little girl.
That one's another pretty short one. That was the first thing I've seen here since I moved up here. What happened was, actually just that night, or earlier in that day, we had a couple of people from a Mormon church, which I'm not personally Mormon, but a few of my dad's friends are, and they came over and blessed the house. And that night, I was brushing my teeth, getting ready for work, and in my peripheral, I saw my dad pass by and kind of looked over and acknowledged him. And right behind him, I thought was my sister going to bed, and right behind her was my dog. And, I saw each one of them individually. I didn't really pay much attention, just kind of looked at them out of the corner of my eye. Well, I was going to go ask my sister if she wanted my dog to sleep in her room that day. So I walked into her room, and she wasn't there. So I was like, huh. So I went downstairs, and there she was on the couch, and I asked her if she'd been upstairs yet, and she went, no. And I went upstairs and told my dad about it, and he said that he didn't notice anybody behind him, but he wasn't looking back behind him either. And I mean, this girl was standing probably a foot and a half behind him, so I mean, even if he was looking behind him, he probably wouldn't have caught it right away because she was smaller.
And how often do you guys hear footsteps?
Yeah, I don't really, because like I said, I'm gone all night. But the weekend after the house was blessed, my stepmom did hear footsteps in the kitchen, which is something I haven't posted onto Reddit yet. But she heard footsteps in the kitchen and what sounded like I think she said a little girl laughing in the basement, which kind of pairs up with something else. I'm not completely sure that this was something paranormal, because my sister has a lot of friends over a lot, but she had a knife down in the basement, turning a screw on the driver, or on the, I'm sorry, on the washer. I guess something was wrong with it. And the following day, she found a name. I think it was Allie, etched into the the washer with the knife that she used to turn that screw. Which, I mean, it could have been anything. I mean, me and my dad are really outdoors people. There's always knives laying around, and I mean, my sister always has friends over. I mean, it did look fresh, and there was what looked like the enamel on it on the tip of the knife, but I mean, I was down there before she was down there, and I mean, nothing down there really bothered me. But I mean, being down there in general does kind of bother me. It does feel like there's something down here. I'm actually in the basement right now, but nothing like right now. I'm not feeling anything. It's kind of off and on, but I don't know if that was paranormal or not. But that's really the only time I can recall anybody having heard footsteps.
So after the house was blessed, was there any change at all in the activity? Did it die down a little bit, or and
It has died down actually since then. Before my dad was seeing, actually both my dad and my stepmom were seeing an old woman standing by their closet every night, and that has stopped happening. They've been sleeping better and all that. I haven't really noticed a change in the atmosphere of the house. I mean, it's been pretty much the same to me, but activity overall has stopped pretty much, other than those brief two instances that happened right after.
what's the most recent thing that's happened?
The most recent thing that happened would be that washer incident, if that was paranormal. Other than that, would be that little girl.
Just scanning through the comments here on Reddit, I see a lot of people they're really interested in what you're saying, but there's a lot of people that are pretty much calling shenanigans on it. I mean, what
Yeah,
would you say about that?
I've always been interested in the paranormal and all that, and the paranormal field needs doesn't need any more lies. I mean, that's just really the only way to put it. If people need to, if we want people to believe, we can't lie about this kind of stuff, because that just makes more people say, oh well, just like you said, shenanigans. That's BS. There's no way. Rather than just taking someone's word for it. I mean, then this stuff is really happening. Like, just something that's not on that thread that happened to me. As a kid, I was probably about 5 years old at the time this happened. And for a long time, I thought this was my imagination. I saw this. I mean, this is even weird recalling it. I saw a clown in my closet. As I got older, I chalked that up to being a kid's imagination and all that. And I believed that for a long time until my little brother was born and was sleeping in that same room and said the exact same thing and described it the exact same way.
Wow.
And I was like, well, how does that even occur to somebody who hasn't seen, at that age, I hadn't been watching scary movies or anything like that. And I remember being very afraid of it. It wasn't like I could see the whole clown. I could see like his arm and a hand that was waving at me. Which is, I mean, that still kind of freaks me out to think about that. But I mean, like, how can a little kid lie about something like that
Right.
when they don't know? So I mean, I just think that the paranormal field needs I, needs more truth in it, instead of all these ghost hunter shows where they go out and they falsify evidence, and like all my favorite that one with that guy named Zach, where they'll kick something on the ground and go, oh, I heard a noise,
Yeah.
and
I think one of those shows actually came to my area one time. We have a bar in my area that's kind of notorious, and a guy I know actually got to hang out with them with one of the crew, and he basically came right out and said that they fake like 90% of the stuff they do.
yeah. And actually I just saw a news article. I'm a sub on, or I'm a moderator on a subreddit called One to Believe. And somebody posted an article there the other day where they had allegations against them about faking a bunch of their stuff.
So, some of the people in the comments here have brought up the idea of putting all this into book form and putting it on Amazon. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I mean it's more of a like a willpower kind of thing. Because I come home and Grand Theft Auto just came out, and I just recently got into playing Saints Row the third also, and so I haven't really been spending a whole bunch of time doing that, but it's something that I do want to do, and it's something that I am planning on doing. I'm just
Right.
also trying to gather up all my experiences throughout my life that that I kind of gotten lost back in my memory there somewhere.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying there. I'm actually a fantasy and horror writer on the side, and one of the hardest things to do is just get started. So I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So I think that's about it. I'm running a little short on time here, but if if you do decide to put anything out in book form, or if anything else happens, you got to come back on and let me know.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just recent stuff that I'm talking about here. I mean, I've thrown in a couple of things from earlier in my life, but I mean, my dad's told me stories throughout his life of things he's seen, at different places. I mean, in completely different states. I've experienced stuff most of my life, from sleep paralysis to, actually seeing things, hearing things breaking and then nothing being there, and all kinds of stuff. So I mean, anytime you want me back, I have a whole lot of stories for you.
Absolutely. Anytime you want to come back, that's fine with me. I'm always looking for, well, really for anything. I'm always taking submissions from anybody who wants to submit. So, I mean, anytime you want to come back is great.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not really trying to advertise or anything here, but if you guys want to check out any other kind of sub like
mhm.
paranormal, I'd strongly suggest trying out it's called Want to Believe, all one word. Um, we post mainly article based
Okay.
things. Like I post a lot of cryptid information. Other people post things about ghosts and psychokinesis and UFOs and all that kind of stuff. But it's more article based, scientific based stuff like that.
Ah, that sounds good. Yeah, I'm always looking for stuff like that too. So anything that can point me in a direction that I haven't previously gone is definitely good information. Before we go, is there anything big that you'd like to just get out there before we cut this off?
Well, I mean, I guess I could share just a brief account of what happened in a house I lived in Plain City.
Okay.
Um, basically, as long as I kept the room the way it was for a little while, everything would be fine in there, but I just could never sleep in the dark in there. But anytime I would move stuff around, things would kind of go crazy for a little while. Like, my dogs would sleep in there, which were at that time, two big Australian Shepherds. And they would just sit there and cower and growl at, they'd both be looking in one direction, just growling and cowering like they were afraid. And then, like my brother has actually saw this happen. My TV would turn off or change channels, and I mean, I've been standing outside and seen somebody standing in my room, and then went out there and nobody else was home and nobody was in my room. I mean, that's just real brief about what happened there, but I slept in that room. That's something that I experienced for several years out of my life. We can go into that more in detail later because a lot of stuff happened in that house.
Oh
But of
yeah, definitely. And I definitely want to have you back on sometime in the near future.
course,
Yeah. Is there if somebody wants to contact you, what would be the best way to do that? Is there anything public you'd like to put out there in case anybody wants to hear more from you?
like I said, I'm a moderator on that sub. Want to believe. Sorry, I blinked there for a second. And Of course, you could just message the moderators, but I post there often. It wouldn't be hard to find a link from me. I usually try to post at least once a day. My username there is PunisherX2012. So, all you'd have to do is click a link, send me a message the moderators on there. I'll get it. Just address who it's to and all that. I'm on Reddit pretty much all day long because I have an app for my phone. So any messages I get, I'll try to reply to. Probably within the hour unless I'm asleep.
Okay, and when I post this interview, I'll link up the subreddit on the blog post along with the Flash players and the MP3 files, so anybody who goes there can have it as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. We've only been around for about a week, but we've had a pretty good influx of people. But we could always use more.
Okay. All right then. It was great having you on, and I hope to see you again in the future. I guess that's it. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. I'd love to be back.
All right. I'll talk to you later then. So that's the interview with Haunted Tyler, and from what I understand, we've only touched the tip of the iceberg there, so look forward to hearing more from him in the future. Now, if you have a paranormal experience that you'd like to submit, go ahead and go on to wotb.blogspot.com. On the left-hand side of the page, you'll find links to submit. There's also links for Facebook. Go ahead and like the Facebook page just to make me happy. There's also a Twitter link, a YouTube link. There's also a Skype number, a Google Voice number, and a good old-fashioned phone number that you can call or text. Again, my trip to Bardstown, Kentucky is coming up very soon. So if you're from, near, or around Bardstown, and you know of anything paranormal that I should see, let me know and I'll check it out when I can. Until next time, keep your eyes and your mind open, or you just might miss what's out there.